Secret Circle.
Welcome to the Secret Circle with me, Dr. Luke Deckard, the podcast where I chat with authors, filmmakers, musicians, and more about the art of their craft and let you in on some of their secrets. Today's guest is Ivy Ngeow, and she's going to be letting you in on some of her secrets as an author. So without further ado, let's bring Ivy on. Ivy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, and good morning to you, Luke.
Good morning. Good morning. From we're both Londony, right? You're down in London?
I'm in South London, so you're right about the down.
There we go. There
Yeah.
we go. We're right in the same kind of. Well, I'm not in South London. I'm north of London, but yes, super excited to have you on the podcast. We got a lot of fun things to chat about. One thing I always ask any kind of creator that comes on the show, the first question is always the philosophical question of why. So I'm curious for you, Ivy. Why do you write? Why do you feel the need to tell stories?
I grew up in Malaysia, with a narrative tradition, and I was surrounded by people, friends, family, teachers, and stories were really a big part of our culture. There were always stories like, you know, somebody would be just talking through what they're doing, and it would be a story like, oh yeah, this guy's brother-in-law told me that I had to drop off the car, and then, and it goes on and on from there. And so I always had an ear for storytelling. And I was really gripped. I mean, I love stories, and soon I was, retelling them in my own style. I didn't know that was writing because I think I began with like kind of an oral tradition.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the value is of kind of oral storytelling? Because I feel like in today's modern culture, particularly in Britain and America, because I live in Britain, but I'm originally from America. I don't feel like there is much of an oral tradition in terms of storytelling generally. I think there's maybe pockets of it in certain demographics and certain groups, but I think generally we don't really have that. So I'm interested in your take on oral storytelling and how important that is for development as a kid.
I think oral storytelling is more common in Asia because of the literacy level. And I remember not being able to read until I was 8 or 9. And that's normal. That's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
and we also start school later than the UK and the US. So it was seen as all right to
Right. Yeah.
completely like ignore books like they didn't exist. And I felt like there was a craving for it. I felt that
Yeah.
I feel that there was more in stories than just being told. And I crave and I look for books. I search for that. But if you didn't, like if you're one of those kids who, I mean, there were a lot of kids that I grew up with, they didn't have a single book in the house.
Right.
That would be, well, I wouldn't say it's unusual, but it was common.
Yeah.
I grew up with that sort of thinking, I've got books in the house. That's unusual, right? That's weird.
Right.
It's like saying I've got a TV and nobody else has got a TV. So I had an access to I found an access to kind of a popular culture.
Awesome.
that was almost foreign. Like I felt I was accessing another world.
Yeah. Yeah. What were because the idea of oral storytelling is quite interesting to me. Are there particular stories that you remember being told as a kid that kind of that have stayed with you by any chance?
Yeah, I mean, I loved horror,
Nice.
even as a child. So I love stories like if you're going right back to like fairy tales. I love the Little Red Riding Hood because obviously that's horror. I can't believe
Yes.
it's a fairy tale, and also the sort of little girl, trope,
Yeah.
in stories. And things that jump out at me later on were vampire stories. I think that,
Oh, interesting.
yeah. So I started with that. And then later on, when I could read, I was really into the murder mysteries. I went through all the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drews,
Yeah.
Enid Blyton, Agatha Christie. So I kind of latched onto like series.
Right.
I really enjoyed following protagonists through series, and they've always got to have adventures. They always got to do stuff that, well, I wasn't doing because I'm living vicariously through my characters, right?
Yes, exactly. Um, no, that's pretty cool. So with horror then, what do you what were some of your favorite horror stories? Like, were you at what point were you, like, maybe exposed to, like, horror in, like, novels or horror in, like, television or film? Did those have any impact on you?
Um, with TV and film, when I was growing up, probably vampire stories, they were
Mm,
popular. And when I was later on, I think I was into Anne Rice.
right,
Yeah, I love that. I didn't realize it was called that, but it was called the Southern Gothic genre, which
right.
I enjoyed. Like even To Kill a Mockingbird. I wouldn't say that's horror, but that's like
No.
everything. It's
Yeah.
literary, it's suspense,
Yes.
and those were the stories I enjoyed the most. Like
Yeah.
with a little bit of everything, and horror, like Frankenstein,
Mm.
um, uh, sort of like secrets in the family, like secret monsters, you know, uh, captivity narratives,
Yeah.
like weirdos trapped in the basements.
I love that, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, just last night, we were watching I don't know if you're a fan of this, but we were watching Child's Play,
Oh, no,
the
yeah.
first
Yeah,
Chucky
yeah,
movie.
Chucky, yeah.
Yeah, it was the first time that my wife had seen it, my friend Phil. I'm not a massive horror fan, but there are a few horror novels and books, books and TV shows and films that I really love, and that is one of them.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of horror on film?
So I'm not a fan of horror in film. And
Interesting.
yeah, I'm more like a fan of horror which is in like within the gothic
The Gothic, yeah.
tradition. Yeah,
Yeah,
within the gothic tradition.
yeah,
So yeah, hence, vampires.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, so Anne Rice is kinda your was is she your main vampire, kind of author, the one that you like the most, or are you a Bram Stoker fan? What's the supreme
Yeah.
vampire novel in your opinion?
It has to be Dracula.
Fair
It
enough.
has to be the
Yeah.
Count. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Have you ever read the sequel, Dracula Returns? He wrote a sequel. I didn't even know this for most of my life. Until about maybe like 5, no, maybe like 10-ish, 12 years ago,
Mm.
I found out that there was a sequel. I bought it and it's been sitting on my shelf ever since. I've not read it. But have you?
No, I haven't read it. No.
What is up with this?
I
Why doesn't
yeah.
anyone read it?
I think that I I somehow felt that it was quite unpopular, and in my
Yeah.
mind, like maybe subconsciously, I kind of put it down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm,
That's for me, it was kind of the
mm.
same. It was fascinating that there was a sequel, but then also equally fascinating that I didn't care to like ever open it up and actually sit down and read it. It's odd. Um, why do you think stories are important?
I think that in this age more than ever, we need stories. People will always need stories. I mean, we
Mm,
needed them when we were children because we couldn't read.
yeah.
Well, I couldn't. So I felt that it was a way of connecting with the imaginary worlds, and even now, I mean, now that like books have to compete with TV and cinema, which are
Yeah.
great, which are so good now,
Yeah.
right? All those are media in which we escape,
Mm,
and books remain very much for me an escape from the ordinary into the extraordinary.
yeah.
Um, I mean, obviously, we've learned from it. Books have to be, to me, educational and entertaining.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's interesting because I also was interested in your idea of the idea that people will sometimes want to watch a film or read a book and they use the phrase I just want to turn my mind off,
Yeah. Okay.
and that
Yeah.
one's always interesting to me. I'm fascinated about your interest and your thoughts onto that particular kind of thinking process when it comes to storytelling.
I think that books are a form of mindfulness.
Mm,
You actually do have to connect.
yeah.
And for people who find it really hard to read, like my daughter has slight dyslexia, and
Yes.
it makes them very upset.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
upsetting,
Yeah.
and it's because of that connection with the lines on the page.
Yes. I can relate. I have the same problem.
Yeah,
I
I know.
totally get her.
It's very common. So
Yeah.
I thought that everybody just went straight into it, and I came to reading quite late.
Mm,
and writing quite late in life. So I was already in the middle of primary school,
yeah,
but I saw this happen too. Like it was hard. I have to read each word,
yeah,
sometimes 10, and then put them together.
yes,
Uh, and it's the same with writing. So writing is like an extension of the reading because it is still an exploration of ideas. The same thing, the exploration of ideas. But
yeah.
instead of taking in 10 words at a time, you are bleeding 10 words at a time.
Yes,
So
it's true, it's
yeah.
true.
So
Someone
it's like
what
a give and take.
Yeah, it was once dyslexia was once described to me as like it's interesting because the background that I have on the live video here is a brick wall, and
Yeah.
it's
Mm,
essentially that the dyslexic person struggles to look at the brick wall as a whole, but
mm.
needs to look at each brick individually and
Oh, yes.
focus on
Okay.
that brick and then the next one and then the next one
Yeah.
and then as you do that you then can put the whole picture together.
Yeah.
Which is totally how my mind works. I don't do particularly well in kind of vague abstract. I need sort of like focused bits to kind of
Mhm.
build the overall picture. So yeah, it's tricky. But yeah, stories. I mean, I love stories growing up as a kid as well. And they were, whether it was film or even, when it was reading, even though it was a
Mm.
struggle, yeah, that escape into imagination land was, I think, quite invaluable, really. Do you think stories have the ability to kind of help shape someone's empathy? I knew someone during when I was doing my PhD who that was like her main focus was looking at how stories can impact an individual like that, and can they influence someone's ability to empathize and connect with other people. I.e., if you're reading stories about people who aren't maybe of your demographic or whatnot, you can begin to understand and learn and connect with them. Do you think that's true?
Yes, I think that I'm a firm believer that
Mm,
fiction makes you empathize,
yeah,
and the reason is it is engaging the reader and the author
yeah,
on an emotional side.
yeah.
So it brings you in a way that your physics textbook isn't going to, because it's connecting you with another human's condition and circumstance.
Yeah,
So I know my one rule for fiction is make them care. It's just three
yeah,
words. Make them care. If they
yeah.
don't care, they're not going to read it. It's going to be a textbook, or it's going to be a manual or something where they don't care. They just want
Yes.
information. Let's
Yeah.
get out quick. We can all go home,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. What was the last story you okay, I'll give you 2 options with this question. What was the either the last story you read that had a big emotional impact on you, or if you don't wanna answer that one, or what was a early story that had a big emotional impact on you?
So I would say that oh, you want me to choose one, right?
Well, you can do either
Yeah.
or you can do both. I don't mind.
Um I I last read a book that really affected me. It was Liz Nugent's Strange Sally Diamond. It's a
Right.
bestseller, and I think it's shortlisted for an award as well.
Yeah.
And it's a captivity narrative, and for some reason, those really get to me. I
Mm.
mean, I've never been a prisoner or whatever, but I just, I've never been incarcerated,
Thank
but
goodness.
maybe soon. I need a lawyer by then.
No kidding.
Yeah, so it's like Room by Emma Donoghue. The stories of
Yeah.
being captured, and I think that these relate to when I was a child, when I was reading the like Prison of Zelda Xander and
Yeah.
the Count of Monte Cristo,
Right, yes, of
things like that.
course.
Like being in prison and then escaping. That kind of story.
Yeah.
Uh, I find really gripping.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Who would be one of your, modern day authors or a group or maybe a couple that you absolutely love and you have to pick up every book that they, publish?
I'd have to say Shari LaPena. She's Canadian.
Yeah,
She writes really gripping stories, and they're about very ordinary people, like regular people in suburbs and stuff, and
yeah.
they drive like huge cars, and whatever the kind of thing that you think, okay, it's suburban America, and I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
it feels like I'm there with them,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, and I love Lisa Jewell, and she write the same thing,
Mm.
but in North London.
Yes.
So yes, those two.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
What do you think the appeal is of kind of suburban storytelling? Obviously the
Hmm.
kind of domestic thriller is a huge genre,
Hmm.
but the in general the sort of the domestic novel is also quite big. It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be fall into the mystery or the psychological or the thrilling subgenre,
Hmm.
but people love these strange stories about life in suburbia,
Mm.
whether it's like a comedy like something like The Burbs, or a bit sort of absurdist like Edward Scissorhands or something, something like that. What do you
Yeah.
think the appeal is of suburban set novels?
Suburban. I think that the suburban or the domestic trope really
Mm,
appeals to ordinary people like
mm,
commuters,
yeah,
mums, um, because they are in that ordinary world. And as I was
yeah,
saying before, just like when you were a child, you want to read about a kid who is very ordinary, has no superpowers, just like you.
mm,
And what happens one day? It's like the what if
yeah,
question that you always get asked, and you always ask yourself for fiction. The
yeah,
what if question. What if something changes that day to that
yeah,
kid or
yeah.
that mom, or that commuter? So we don't, because I think that we want to empathize. So back to empathy, we want to empathize with characters who have no superpowers. If
Mhm,
they're so brilliant, handsome, rich, smart, then who cares? Why do we want to know about them? We are not
mm,
interested in those people. They're just going to make you mad. So
yes,
you want to have characters whom you're going to support, you're going to follow to the end, because you want to see their challenges. Their challenges which you might face, but because fiction is an
mhm,
extension of reality, it's not reality, but it's an extension.
yeah, yeah,
So these characters can exist in that world.
yeah. What's your so let's flip that a little bit then. What's your take on thinking of like recent popular shows, like Succession or even Peep Show, which is written by the same guy.
Yeah.
Um, what's your take on shows like that? Because Peep Show is domestic, but it's just
So popular.
they're
Yeah.
awful people. They're awful people.
Yeah.
Both
Yeah.
Mark and Jeremy are. I mean, I find the show hilarious. But
Yeah.
what is it about those shows and types of stories where you're
Mm,
really engaged in the sort of the what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, the sort of vile individuals, that
mm.
you're still interested in them. What's the appeal for that, if in your opinion?
Okay, the vile individuals are are people that we sort of love to hate.
Mm,
So those characters draw in an audience because we
mm,
want to hate them,
yeah,
and we want to follow them and see, is there any downfall, is there anything to laugh at. So those shows like Peep Show, The Office, and
yeah,
anything related to a mundane suburban commuter life,
yeah,
they I think the purpose is actually uh, to bring about, I think, a sense of a satirical,
mm,
uh, it's like a satirical take
yeah,
on suburban life.
yeah,
And
yeah,
they want to laugh about that because obviously the commuters, mums or whatever, they they want to laugh about
yeah.
the life that they know is mundane.
Yes. Yes. I totally agree with that. I totally agree with
Yeah.
that. I was because you mentioned The Office. That is one of my favorite shows. But
The
the
office, yeah, oh yeah.
the other one that Greg Daniels did, is Parks and Recreation,
Yeah.
which is set. I don't know if you ever saw that one, but it's set in a small town government in a small, made up town in Indiana, which is
Mhm.
where I'm originally from.
Oh, right,
So
okay. Yeah,
that
hence
was
the interest. Yeah.
yeah, that was actually really funny to go see, like, to watch this show, small town government,
Mm,
poking fun at, kind of Midwest Indiana, cliches and things like that. That was quite a joy to see. And yeah, like I always find it interesting, the because some people will say that they just can't watch or read stories where the protagonists are, vile people,
Oh, okay, yeah.
which
I've heard that before as well. Like, I hate the character, so I can't they have to keep loving the character. I mean,
yeah,
why? The talented Mr. Ripley, he's a serial killer, right? But he's
yes,
very lovable. He's very
yes,
lovable, and
yes,
everybody's attracted to him. Yeah, he's
yes,
very funny and smart. So
yes,
I think it shows the yin yang in the
yes,
characterization. Like, not everybody is totally vile. They are nice too. That's why we like them. I mean,
yes,
and also again, that's an extension of reality, because in life we know, like, we have friends, we know people who are very very annoying, but we like them because maybe there are good things about them. They're very generous.
yeah,
They are helpful, and okay, they're bossy, and they have their negative sides. So
yeah,
when we show characters which have both negative and positive sides, I think that's a winner. I think
yes.
that's essential. That's why readers want more of those characters.
Yes. You made me think of Dexter. Dexter is one of my
Yes,
I love
Dexter. Yeah, I
character.
love the character.
I love Dexter so much, and it's I was so conflicted. There's conflict in the books because you want him to succeed in a
Yeah.
really in this morbid way, but
Mm.
also I was very very conflicted with the special series that they did, Dexter New Blood, where they
Oh,
they
yes,
kind
yes,
of
yes.
the original series 9 of Dexter, or maybe it was series 8, I can't remember how many series it had now, was kind of terrible, and it ended on a low because of that. And so they were like, "Well, let's maybe try and do one more series to redeem
Redeem the
ourselves."
characters, yeah.
And I
Mm.
think they absolutely they did an incredible job with Dexter New Blood. But the ending, which I like and made sense, there was also this sad I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but there was a sense of I wanted Dexter to succeed in more ways than one, and when that was subverted, I was gutted because I wanted more, and
Yeah.
it would be very difficult to do more based on what they did. But, you're right, The Talented Mr. Ripley is a really great example of that
Mm.
sort of complicated, morally bent character that you somehow find yourself fast. He's yeah, I love that stuff. I love it so much.
Yes.
Um, okay, let's talk a little bit about your journey as a writer, because no two writers really have the same journey.
Mhm.
When did you first begin to take writing seriously?
I would say I'm kind of a early starter, but then it got completely dropped for decades.
Can
And
relate.
yeah, it's like, what's writing? I don't. Oh yeah, writing. I forgot,
Yeah.
and I sort of like I started late again. I
Mm,
when I had worked for a long time, like establishing myself in my profession, and then
mm,
I wanted to do a master's because I wanted to take it to a kind of a professional level. I felt like I was stuck. I
yeah.
mean, I when I say I was an early starter, I was highly commended for a story in a national competition when I was 16, and I was
Mm,
because back then it was like there's no YA and there's no teen fiction. It's like you're either an adult or
y
you're under 12, you're a child.
yes.
So I was writing adult fiction that I thought, yeah, okay, well, this is pretty good. And my mom was part of that. She was very encouraging, very helpful. She's one of the most instrumental characters in my life in helping
Mhm.
me. She's always cutting out from newspapers. Hey, look, there's a competition. You love competition. You should write in. It's only 50 words, and you might win $50. So
Amazing.
you should write. Yeah. So my mom used to cut that out, and I think that she did ask me to enter this competition.
Mhm.
And I won a trip to KL, to Kuala Lumpur, to the capital city, to do a
Awesome.
weekend workshop. It was my first time away, and I was like first time on a train to the
Yeah.
capital city, and I was 16. So it was a very scary experience. And then from then on, I didn't really take it very much, in my stride. I just thought
Yeah.
that I've done that now. What do
Yeah.
you want me to do? Like what? Yeah, I thought that books were written by other people.
Yes. Yeah.
That's in fact, a lot of writers think that, like, okay, well, other people write them and I just read them, or I'll just watch the show when it comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I kind of became very passive. And then I got another glimmer that showed me that, oh, maybe I'm not really bad at. I think maybe I'm okay at this, because I wrote into the BBC World Service with a short story,
Oh,
and they broadcast it, and it was performed by an actress of
awesome.
Truly Madly Deeply. Um, And so she read it out on BBC World Service. I was very proud, and I
Yeah.
remember we all sat in the car to listen to it. Yeah.
When was this? When was how old were you when this happened?
I was already an adult. I was 26 or 24.
Cool.
Yeah, I was, yeah, so I was a young adult.
Yeah.
And once again, I just thought it's like a hobbyist thing, like, oh yeah, you write in and you might get paid. That's
Yeah.
actually what I thought. I was writing to get paid, which is ridiculous now when you think about it. Think, like, I'm going to enter that competition because I want to get paid.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to be rewarded for these things. I mean, I'm not going
Yes.
to make a quilt and give it away. If I make a quilt, I want people to pay me and buy it from me, right?
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
was thinking of it in that sense, still like a craft, like still like baking, knitting, but I was
Yeah.
still thinking of it as a thing you do for a hobby to make money.
Yeah.
That's completely wrong. There's no such thing now. I mean, like the amount of stuff that we get for free, that I'm reading for free, I'm giving away for free.
Oh,
It just doesn't. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like it's
yeah.
completely changed my outlook. Uh,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
when I did the MA,
Mm.
and I entered another competition. So that was my third sign that maybe I still could do this. And
Yeah.
I won that competition. And it was a lot of money. Yeah, it was £1,000.
Wow.
So and it was only one prize out of like I think there were 1,500 applicants
Jeez.
for it. So only one prize. It was a university prize,
Yeah.
and I applied for it. And then I thought, okay, but these are all still short stories. So during my masters, I made myself write a novel.
Mm.
So I used the MA to start the, yeah. I think you had to write 20,000 or something like that. You would know better
Yeah.
because you've just done a
Yeah.
PhD. So
Yeah. Yeah. My
it's something.
MA was I'm pretty sure my MA dissertation was 20,000 words.
So
Yeah.
it's 20,000, which is the largest amount I've ever written since my short stories were like, well, BBC World Service, like really like 600 to 800 words.
Yes.
So this
Yes.
is a really big deal for me. And the competition which I won in my MA, that story was 1,000 words. So then I thought, oh, this is quite easy. I'm making £1 a word. I'm if I write 70,000 words, I'm going to make £70,000. This is, what
Nope.
do you think of that? Still very naive because
Yeah.
the internet was very limited then.
Oh,
So
yes.
all this information is not available. There's no bloggers, no such thing as blogging. So there's nothing you can find online. You'd have to go and ask your tutor.
Yeah.
So you have to remain a close connection with your colleagues, like your classmates and
Yeah.
your alumni. That's the only way. And it's all like they just spread, rumors, like what they know and stuff, because there was not much information available.
Yeah.
So it's not really that I didn't carry on writing. I didn't know that you could keep going, or start submitting and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally get that. I remember having really, really similar thoughts when I was younger
Yeah.
about trying to do anything artistic. I remember at one point my dad
Mm.
saying that someone he went to high school with worked on the special effects for one of the Terminator movies.
Oh.
And that blew my mind
Yeah.
because like we live in a really small town where nothing interesting ever happens. No one really goes on to do anything interesting or great.
It sounds like my town. I think we're
Yeah.
from the same town.
Yeah, it
Mm.
was so, and so I was like, how did this person from this town go to
Yeah.
how? And I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. What
I
happened? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean what happened with me I think is eventually when I got to be sort of, finished high school and was looking
Mm.
into university, I just thought maybe subconsciously was thinking a little bit about that person who just got really far away, and I was like, to be
Mm.
successful, I think I need to get
Mm.
really far away, and then I was like, I'm gonna go to England.
You're
You
not
know?
wrong there. It's true. You kind of have to leave that
Mm,
small world, the small town world behind. Nothing
yeah.
happened in my town either. It's practically 70 or 80% working class.
Oh, yeah,
Everybody that
yeah.
only like sprays cars, spray the nails, spray,
Yeah.
anything sprayable is sprayed. So
Spray your house,
it's
I'll spray your
yeah,
cat, I'll spray
it's
your
very
dog.
industrial. Yeah, it's sort of like that kind of vibe. So nothing
Yeah,
happens. Like
yeah.
if you can get a job and get married, I mean that's it. That's your
Yes.
achievement. You don't do
Yes.
anything artistic. I don't think I even went to an art gallery or museum until I was leaving high school. Like,
Mm.
it's not like now. The kids go to museums, kids go, they see dinosaurs. It's like they see it all by
Yeah.
the time they're like 5.
Yes, so true.
Yeah, and I
Mm.
never went to that gallery. I didn't know there was there was more to
Yeah,
outside
yeah.
my
Like,
city.
yeah, because I think I saw my first play when I was
Play.
16.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
never went
same
to,
here.
like, a
Yeah.
proper play until
Hmm.
that point, and,
Hmm.
yeah, it's interesting how sort of, the internet has been helpful in that way, and that
Mm.
has allowed
Yeah,
people to connect and find things much easier and realize there's so much more out there.
yeah,
Um, so you use your MA to write a book.
yeah.
What talk to me about the first book that you wrote and you tried to get published and the difficulties of that, if there were any.
Yeah, so the first book was the one that I started in the MA. So it's very literary and it's
Mhm.
got really like important themes because I think the point of an MA is to
What was it
push
what was
you.
it about? Tell me, finish your thought, but also tell me what the book was about.
Okay, the book is called Cry of the Flying Rhino, and it's about power struggles in Borneo,
Yeah.
where I was telling you that I enjoy the captivity narrative. So basically, there's this escaped convict,
Mm,
and he's finished and he gets out, and he quickly finds the vicar, the small town church, because he knows that they will forgive him, and oh yeah, come on in, we love
right.
you, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll help you what you want. So
yeah.
he knew immediately but he also knows that the vicar, the church is very poor. They really need more funding from UK. So the
Mm,
the pastor, the vicar, is keeps writing to UK, asking for funding for this and that. They want solar panels, they want all this stuff. they need
right.
they need more they need more they need
Yeah,
books, they need stuff for the church. And it's how the convict helps the vicar, and the vicar has to help him back to get
awesome.
his life back. He's taking revenge
Mm,
for a crime that he did not convict, which is why he was in prison.
ah,
So those
little
are
lame.
all,
Yeah,
yeah, the power struggles. And so it was very exciting, because then I get to live this fantasy of this writing about the prisoner, the
yeah,
escaped prisoner
yeah.
narrative. Um, and so I it was very difficult to get published because that kind of theme is like, um, uh, where does it fit
Mm,
on the bookshelf? It's sort of like, nobody asked Harper Lee that. Where does your book fit? But it has everything. It's all of those things. It's
yes.
literary, it's suspense, it's horror, it's thriller, it's everything
O
is in there.
on that point of quote, "Where does it fit?" That is one question that just really fucking annoys me.
It bugs you, right?
It
It bugs
really,
you.
really does. It
Yeah.
really does
Mm,
because I just like I hear it so often from people. They're like, "Oh well, they really like this book, but they don't know where it fits."
mm,
You made the good point, like Harper Lee and people like that. What's like there was no where does it fit.
mm.
It was just they published good stories, and
Yeah,
there
it's
is a
either fiction or non-fiction in the old
yes.
days. Yeah.
Yes, and I quite
Yeah.
like that. Like there was no crime fiction, there was no children's fiction, there was just
Yeah.
fiction, and that to me, I think was
Yeah.
really cool. Like, kids fiction was fairy tales, and then everything else
Yeah.
was fair game.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, like, do you think the publishing industry today is struggling because of the monster they've created by something has to fit a specific demographic or a specific set of tropes, and
Yeah.
they're not taking, do you feel we're a little bit too risk averse at the moment within the industry?
Yes, and that's why people tweet all the time about their rejections, because
Yes.
it's very limiting, what we can and can't do,
Yeah.
and we still have to fit on the shelf. So
Yeah.
um, someone like me will have
Yeah.
to fit on a diverse shelf, because
Yeah.
if I'm writing from a white middle-aged male point of view,
Yeah.
they don't know where does it fit. So that's the question that comes up.
So wait, so has that been said to you?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
That's ridiculous.
So I mean, because you get, sometimes you're so lucky you get editorial feedback. Mostly you don't. You get totally ignored, like you didn't exist, or you never
So
send
true.
anything out. Yeah, you have never sent an email in the last 10 years. It feels like that, right? But
Yes.
sometimes you get a gem, and
Yeah.
it's like gold dust. Somebody actually cares and
Yeah.
gives you the right feedback, like we love this, but okay, and then they will tell you why.
Mm. So,
And
because you
yeah,
mentioned earlier, you mentioned the Townsend Mr. Ripley. I mean, no one was gonna tell Patricia Highsmith she can't
yeah,
write a white guy who's a serial
yes,
killer.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And
Now it's the
it's
woke generation. I find
yes,
that it's very limiting, and it's really upsetting that you can't offend anyone. Okay, like
right?
everything is offensive. Peep
Everything is.
Show, The Office, they are all fools. They make fools of themselves because
Yes.
that's satire. That's the whole point of satire, right?
Yes.
So, but now you can't do that because I can't make fun of Asians because I'm Asian, but I can't make fun of the white male because I'm not white male. So you can't offend anybody.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so I think that's a certain blandness now, and also the TWs, the trigger warnings and things like that,
Yes.
uh, that have that have changed. So when you read like Towns and Mystery, you realize it's very mid-century. That's the world then.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And then again, that's also the other thing that interests me as well with about these particular constraints on a genre like a domestic thriller or thrillers and crime and all the
mm,
subgenres of crime fiction where I mean we're talking about murder and mayhem and lies and greed and deceit and really like nasty stuff like it's the perfect genre to explore the seediness of the human condition but you have to do it now without I mean, they saved it without offending. I think the stuff that rises to the top is able to push through some of that stuff.
yeah,
But
it's true.
for I think for up and coming authors or kind of mid level authors stuff like that, you still have to kind of battle with those comments because you're not as big as person X, so therefore they still want to control a little bit too maybe a little bit too much. I might be talking my ass, but that's the way it feels
But
at
for
times.
99.9% of us,
Yeah,
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 I
yeah,
and I say us because we are the writer community and we are also
yeah,
readers. Okay, we are
yeah,
the reading and writing community,
yeah,
and for us, that's a big deal
yeah.
because of your loss
Absolutely.
of freedom, right? And
Yeah,
yet you're doing something that is supposedly liberating. You're
yeah,
doing something that you're creating. You are making something, right?
yeah, yeah.
So
So your first book then was the remind me the name again. It was a really
the
cool name. The
cry of the flying rhino,
the Cry of the
and
Flying Rhino.
yeah.
Did were you able to get that published?
So I call myself 12 years a slave because I submitted it for 12 years.
Yes.
And I finally got it published when I submitted to a Hong Kong competition and I won a prize for it. So it's quite a lot. It was 10,000 Hong Kong dollars, which of course, to
Yeah.
me was like it's worth it, right? Doing
Yes.
this. Yeah, but the thing is it took 12 years and I really think it was to do with that whole
Yeah.
where does it fit?
Yeah.
Okay, if I if I could write down each of those rejections, like I think it's
Yeah.
more than 80 rejections,
Yeah.
87 before I submitted it for this competition. And people say, why don't you just give up? Why do you keep going? What if you have to query until you die?
Mhm.
And I said that no, because I was very close to self-publishing it because I thought, this is a really good story about this escape
Yes.
convict. So I'm interested in it. I don't mind if only 10 of my friends buy it, or you
Right.
know, I don't mind. Okay, so I
Yes.
I thought I might do that just to well, basically put it to bed so I don't have to keep querying it anymore.
Yeah.
But then when I went this prize, so I went, my whole family went out, and it was really fantastic because my
Oh,
mom and
cool.
my dad went out as well. And as you know, my mom is so part of my
Yeah.
writing since I was a child. So they all went out to Hong Kong for the award ceremony, and
Yeah.
then so that was that book published, and then I thought that I took a few years to know what I was trying to write.
Right.
So because that book was I was trying to write like Harper Lee, so it was more
Mm.
everything like you know that kind of premise,
Yeah.
the struggles between the protagonist and the antagonist in a very hostile setting in the
Yeah.
jungle in Borneo.
Yeah.
So and also the church thing, the whole the religious kind of ethos that
Mm.
he had to work under.
Yes.
So yeah, so those are very challenging topics, I would say, like, you know,
Definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
difficult themes.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
So publishing your first novel, then how what was the journey like from that point onwards? Did it become any easier? What were you know, what were there still more challenges? 'Cause I think, I mean, some of my early works, the minute they were published, people were like, "Oh my god, you must be making a lot of money." I'm like,
Yeah.
I make about enough to go like buy a meal at McDonald's. You know,
Yeah.
like, I mean, it's not a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
You
You
know,
get you get enough to buy your Sainsbury's shopping for.
yes, you
Yeah.
can't pay rent, but you can buy some food, a little
Yeah.
bit of
Yeah.
food.
You can treat yourself to a
Yeah,
bottle of wine. Yeah.
exactly, and
Yeah.
then it's gone, and then it's gone.
Yeah. So I
Um,
think that's the same. I mean, I think that you if you 99.9% of us go through that, it's absolutely normal. I mean,
yes.
I think that my current publisher of the American Boyfriend, they actually told me
Mhm.
most books sell 300 to 600 copies. Okay, and this is with a
Yeah.
top publisher, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Baffling that.
Most, and then there's one who will sell six figures.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and there's one. And a lot of them might be in the mid range. Like they
Mhm.
will sell about upwards of 500 copies to
Yeah.
like 2000, and that's that's it.
Yeah.
Or 4000, something, a few thousand, under
Yeah.
5000. So that's normal.
Yeah, because I remember reading once somewhere, and I might be getting this number wrong, possibly, but I
Okay.
remember reading about the New York Times bestseller list, and
Yeah.
I remember being really shocked at how many copies needed to sell
Mhm.
to make it, and it was I'm pretty sure it was within the hundreds. I'm pretty
No,
sure.
even I thought it was 8000 to
I don't
be
know. It
on.
was I might be wrong, but I remember it being a staggeringly low number. Even if it is 8,000, that's still pretty stinking low. But I remember
Yeah,
being
that's right. Yep.
surprised by how small that is. Why what do you think the struggles
Yeah.
are? Why do you think, is it just too much out there and that's why people aren't,
Yeah, this it's a
or
supply and demand problem. This
yeah,
is it's an oversupply. And also, as I said, the competition with TV and cinema, which are so good now. I mean, I
yeah,
used to stop watching all TV, like I think probably 10 to 15 years ago, because it's rubbish.
yeah.
You go and see a film, a movie in the cinema, and it's like, wow, that's great. Okay, that's it. I'm not watching anything else for 2 months. It's like,
Yeah, yeah,
but now it's very good, and you have to actually think which one. Oh my god, which one can I commit to? Like series,
yes. Oh my
and then
god, that's
there's this
true.
book as well to read, and then this. So there's you have to compete with other consumer items, and now the book is like a consumer item because that's why they ask you where does it fit,
Yeah,
because the market dictates. So I don't think it's actually the publisher. Of course they don't like to take risks because they're
yeah,
businessmen, right? They're businessmen,
yes,
so they don't take many risks. They take one risk, and then it might go wrong, it might go
yeah,
horribly wrong for them.
yeah,
So I think that the market dictates that, like something shows them that that's very popular, that's it, and then they want more of that because
yeah.
that's the popular genre.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
think, and then it's, yeah, that to me is always a little bit sad, a little bit depressing, because I think there's so many great stories out there that they
Mm,
don't necessarily fit the, this might not be a police procedural, but it's a really damn good crime book.
mm,
Why,
mm, mm, mm,
like, sometimes I think the risk isn't as risky as some publishers claim, in my
mm,
opinion. I think sometimes there is a sense of, this is just easier for us to package something that looks like the other thing, that looks like that other thing, that looks like that other thing. Like, I remember
yeah.
being in Waterstones a couple months back, and I tweeted jokingly about a series of book covers
Oh
that
no. Yeah.
that
Okay.
and this was no dig on any of the authors, but like, I was, because one of my friends was what was included in this, but like, you couldn't look at any of these covers
Mm,
and determine like who the author was. It could, like, it didn't matter because they just all looked exactly the same. And I just kind of thought, I feel like that's maybe a disservice to the reading world,
mm,
because I don't think, yes, people do look for familiarity and things like that,
mm,
but give yourself a bit of an edge. Don't be afraid. Publishing needs not be afraid to give some edge to things. Things can be similar, but not exactly the
mm.
same. And there's too much imitation, I think, of
Yeah, the
other
same color
successful
palette.
things.
It must be
Yeah,
the same font, the
yeah,
same color palette.
yeah,
I mean, I'm a designer myself, and I have actually done other people's, uh, covers, and
Yeah.
they're shareables,
Yeah.
and their branding is very important. And the reason
Yes.
why they're in the same font and color palettes is because of their branding, like
Yes.
that author's branding.
Yes.
And
But
so
then
a
what happens
rom-com
when
has to look at
multiple
like a
authors
rom-com.
Yeah, so what
Yeah.
happens then when multiple authors are using the same branding? Then it just becomes messy.
True. I mean, yes, because then you can't identify. You have no idea who it
Yeah.
is. Well, who is it again? You can't even tell, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's to make you not read the blurb. It's for sales.
Mhm. Yeah.
So they, I know, I like that. I saw, that cover is exactly what.
Yeah.
It's got the woman, or it's got the running away man in a
Yes.
silhouette. That's it. I love the story. So it's to
Yes.
make it faster, because you know that I did a copywriting course, and
Mm,
I think in the first 17 seconds that someone lands on an Amazon page,
mm,
that's the time you have to convince them. So sometimes they won't read the blurb. Or if they don't know the if they don't know the name of the author,
yeah,
they may not even read the blurb, and
right.
they have only that much time to decide. And the size is this size. It's the size of a postage stamp. The picture is so small. Sometimes you're
Yes.
reading on your phone.
Yep.
um so that's why, hence the color palette,
Yeah.
because they saw the colors, and that, oh, that's it. I love the colors. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same with the titles, like, the overuse of, girl
Titles.
was the big
Yeah,
thing a few years
girl,
ago, and
girl
it's
A.
still
Yeah, girl on
it's
the
still
train.
yeah, the girl, it
Yeah,
still sticks a
gone
little bit.
girl. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your latest book, the American Boyfriend. Firstly, for anyone listening who doesn't know anything about this book, give them a nice little tease about what the American Boyfriend is about.
The American Boyfriend is an Asian domestic suspense romantic thriller, psychological thriller, and it's set in London and Key West, and it's about an Asian single mom in London who meets her American boyfriend through LinkedIn, and travels to Key West with her toddler to
Mm,
meet him, where she encounters danger when she meets locals.
mm. I love it. It was such a fun read. It's been a long time since I've been to Florida, so that was quite fun to revisit Florida through your book. Um, I'm always interested in how much the author's real life
Mm.
bleeds into their storytelling. So for example, like, I know the book that I wrote for my PhD.
Yeah.
It's a 1920s thriller. There's not a lot of direct meanness in that book because of time period and things like that, but there is a lot of me in terms of the what I was going through emotionally and
Mm.
mentally during the writing process of that. Things that were sort of using the book to work through different sorts of thoughts about what it was like growing up in a particular type of home, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm interested, for you, was there anything you were pulling from real life, from your real life, as you were putting this story together?
Yeah, sure. I mean all of the characters, because obviously I developed them. But I first was inspired when I have been to Florida myself, and I
Mm,
experienced the same kind of culture shock
mm.
when I was in Key West, and I was on the overseas highway, and I had to pop into a supermarket or convenience store, whatever they're called,
Yeah.
and and I saw a whole gun display cabinet, floor to ceiling. Every gun that you wanted, next to like the tampons and the sandwiches, the postage stamps,
Yeah.
every gun, like little big revolvers,
Mm.
hunting rifles, and it was very easy. And the woman immediately came out and said, "Oh, can I help you?" Like I'm going to buy a gun when I get my sandwich.
Yeah.
I then I realized that this is a really interesting premise, because it really raises. I know you're from the U.S. It really raises that that other cultures'
Mm.
daily reality. This is their
Yeah.
daily reality. I know it's not ours, but it's an eye opener because
Yes.
unless you've seen it for yourself, you don't realize how easy it is, um,
Yes.
um, and how dangerous it could be. So, so that kind of scene sets the dangerous tone
Mm.
for a thriller, like for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. And when you were, I'm just also interested in writing process. So what was your, you're pulling from these kind of experiences that you've had. What's your writing process when you're crafting these books? Are you starting with small ideas, starting with themes, starting with a character? What did you start with, and then how do you build off of whatever your starting point is?
I usually begin with character because I think with character with plot
Mm,
uh doesn't make any sense unless you
mm,
have the characters developed first.
yeah.
So I never kind of start with the plot. I usually start with the characters, and
Mm,
whatever they want, I take it away from them.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's how I started. So I still go back to the first rule, which is make them care.
Mm,
So does your reader care that she wants something badly and
yeah.
it gets taken away? You see, because that's the thing that can propel the story from beginning to end. And if you haven't got that um, that character's goal taken away from them, then
Yeah.
who cares? Why do you care that she gets what she wants?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and why is it so important to her? So I think that's a question that you probably have to ask daily because
Mm,
without that you can't write the plot.
yeah.
Yeah, so I usually start with that, and I usually kind of outline as well. I mean, you probably know more about this. You're doing a PhD, so you've done a
I did a lot of
PhD.
that by
So,
the seat of my pants. I probably should have outlined more.
but there's planting now, isn't it? Planting, which is
Yes,
planning and what plotting and panting.
pantsing. Yes.
Mm,
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I mean, I think outlining is I try to outline, and then I always come up with a different idea along the
yeah.
way, and then I'm always having to restructure and re-outline because the new
Mm.
idea I like more than what the original trajectory was going to be. Do you ever have that problem?
Yeah, all the time. I'm a writer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I try to look at the treatment. You know how I kind of learned it from studying films.
Mm,
So I write the treatment first, and then
yeah.
I keep revisiting it. So that avoids the whole outlining thing, like block by block, like post-it
Yeah.
note after post-it note. So I think that eliminates that because the treatment will show how you got from the beginning to the middle to the end.
Yes.
So that's a way of doing it. And the next thing I do after the like revisiting the treatment over and over is actually to draw the diagrams. I actually
Mm,
work out diagrammatically, oh, just like storyboarding actually, like this is the
yeah.
film thing, and I work out where the beats are going to be.
Yeah.
Uh, and how many do we get to the finish point? Otherwise you get that the same, I'm sure you know about it, the sagging middle, all the
Yes.
usual problems, like this bit being very boring or whatever.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
and I cut out the boring if it bores me to write it, it will definitely bore the reader.
Yes.
I might as well be writing a manual. In fact, I do that. If I bored with something, I quickly go off and write a recipe or whatever. I'll write a manual like how to something something,
Right.
because then you get rid of this urge to write the boring thing. Because as writers, we haven't we over internalize, we overthink things, and we write as if people want to read the boring things, but they
Yes.
don't.
They don't. No.
They don't.
I think I can remember back, when I was, doing the PhD, because I only just recently finished. But when I was doing that, I was reading a lot of historical books. I was reading a lot of, if I could find books particularly set in Scotland that were 1920s,
Oh
1930s,
yeah,
40s. I was,
yeah.
because my book is 1920s Scotland.
Oh,
Um, and there were some that I was reading that I really liked, some that I was reading that were just felt like, here's a bit of dialogue, and then let me just inject a Wikipedia article about it full of information
yeah.
about this building, and then, okay, let's go back to some character dialogue. No, here's another, like, one whole page was basically a Wikipedia dump, and I was like, what is
Why
going
did why didn't
on?
the editor? This is where I wouldn't
Yeah.
call up the author on it. Well, what about the editor? Why don't they take
Oh,
out the boring
yes.
bits?
Yeah, I agree. Well, actually, it's an interesting question. We kind of diverge on for just a quick second.
Mm,
Do you think there is a? Do you think editors are not as sharp or as, I don't know, clear-minded as what they maybe editors in the past might have used to be? I feel like there's maybe a lack of a critical eye
mm,
with not all. This is not a this I'm doing a blanket statement here, but
yeah.
there seems to be a lack of a critical eye with editing in general. And because I can't tell you how many books, particularly in the historical genre, that I read that I'm like, you as an editor, I cannot believe that you didn't say this
Mm.
whole page could go because it's just background information that someone could find up on Wikipedia. It has nothing to do with the story. Yeah, do you think there's an editor problem generally?
I can see all the editors
I know.
listening in, going, "What? What did he just say? What did Luke just say?"
I'm here to
Uh,
stir shit up.
okay. This is not a show about editing, so
No.
okay. In case you just tuned in, I know. I think that they vary,
Yeah.
and now I kind of like I do look for if I wasn't like if
Mhm.
I wasn't finished yet, and
Yeah.
I'm nearly finished, but I'm kind of get critical feedback. I'm
Mm.
looking for an editor who's got experience in film or
Yeah.
the whole idea of the treatment, because I think that
Yeah.
without them to do the push and pull, you're not going to be able to pull back. And I mean that to me,
Yeah.
an editor is like a personal trainer. Okay, you can
Mm.
train
Yes,
yourself,
totally.
yeah,
Totally.
but there's many types of personal trainer. There are those who don't do anything, who just stand there and make you do stuff,
Yeah.
and there's those who train uh others. And you can watch, so you can watch what they've been training. And I think that a good editor will make your manuscript very fit and lean.
Yeah.
I really believe that.
Yeah.
And the bad one will just go, oh well, you probably have to just do more at home yourself, or whatever they.
Yeah.
Yeah, more DIY. Yeah, you go off and DIY.
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm totally with you on that. And also in a side note to like all the hyperventilating editors who might be listening to this right now. I also know that there's also a struggle. There are editors that I'm fully aware they just they're not up to scratch and I don't know
Mm,
why that's just a reality. But
mm,
also there is the problem that traditional
mm.
publishing doesn't invest a lot of resources to their authors in general because the most of the resources goes to, as you were saying, the one who is selling six or more figures, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The one who is selling 300 or 400 copies of their book, they're not going to get a deep dive editorial from that publisher. If you do, it's a rarity, to be honest. I a lot of my friends, and I'm sure you know a lot of people as well, who will be like, the editorial was almost nil
Mm, mhm,
on a book. And there is sort of a people tell me no, but I don't agree.
mm,
But I feel like there's also a sort of an expectation now for the authors to hire their own editors
mm.
to punch the novel up a little bit,
Yeah.
which is something that really didn't exist 15-20 years ago. It's really
No,
in the
you
last 20
just press
years.
send. You press
Yeah.
send. Yeah, you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean it's true. And there was actually a tweet yesterday, very interesting. Would you
Mm,
spend money on an editor before you submit, or would you like edit the same thing
yeah.
again, DIY,
Yeah.
and then press send?
Yeah.
So, and it's very interesting thread, um, because I engaged on it. I responded, and I
Mm,
said that I would,
mm,
because I'm me.
yeah.
I don't feel that I'm up to scratch. I'm not even writing in my first language.
Yeah.
So I feel that I think it's pretty good. Somebody actually the competition that I sent Cry of the Flying Rhino to said that they didn't know that I was not, because it
Right.
was judged blind. They didn't know that
Yeah.
I was not a native English speaker.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty good. But I would pay an editor because I just need another set of eyes. And if
Yes.
yeah, I just need somebody who's quite critical, like
Yeah.
who's not a friend. I will not, I
Sure.
would try to, hire somebody who will give me what I need.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
personal trainer, you wouldn't hire your friend. Your friend is going to ask you to go for coffee. Why train? So
Yes.
yeah, so you hire somebody who's like not very professional, but
Yeah.
that doesn't know your work or you very well. And I think that that would certainly help me. So I did for my submission
Mm.
before I
Yeah.
submitted the American Boyfriend.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a very complicated topic in question, but yeah, I think if you can do it,
Mm,
I think it can be worth it. I think the problem that this
mm,
creates is that there are people who can't for all sorts of financial reasons. And if their manuscript is getting rejected because it needs editorial, that is also the publisher's job as well. It used to
yeah.
be part of the publishing, machine, and it's becoming less so, which I think has the could have the problem of ostracizing certain working class individuals,
Yeah.
while we're also trying to do a lot of mouth service and say that we want working class, we want working class
Oh
writers.
yeah, but there's ways to save money because you don't have to have the whole novel edited. The the
It's true.
the publisher is going to only read the one page. If they hate it, they won't read 10 pages.
That's true.
Your
That is also
first
true.
page is the most important. That's why you need to get the top editor, because if you get somebody who's just like a friend or
Yeah, oh, yeah,
whatever, and also like when your manuscript gets signed
yeah,
and it gets taken over by a professional editor.
yeah.
See, that editor is like it. I mean, in everything in publishing is 100% luck. It's 100% luck
Oh god,
because,
yeah.
or maybe 120% luck, because when you get the editor, how do you know? How do you know who they are? You might be better, and from what I understand, the publishing industry is very young, so you're going to
Hmm.
get a 21-year-old or 23-year-old who is going to edit,
Yes.
and so the question is, how do you know
Yeah,
what you're going to end up with? So
yeah.
I'd rather have had more than one editor,
Definitely, definitely.
and I would get that one page
Yeah.
edited.
I think that's good advice. That is good advice. How many drafts do you go through? Say we'll use the American Boyfriend as an example. How many drafts did this book go through before it was ready?
Oh, it's very few because I think I'm getting better at writing. It's my fifth
Good.
book, so
Nice.
I would say three or four.
Okay. That's
And
good.
they
That
they
yeah.
got the fifth version, but it's
Yes.
tiny, tiny. Like it was very, very tiny.
Yeah.
Because don't forget, once they get the version and the editor, the team, there's an editorial team, they take
Yeah.
over because there's
Yeah.
there's developmental editor, line editor, copy editor. So they take over, right?
Yeah.
So by then you have to write even more times. There's even more drafts coming.
Yes.
Yeah, and my main they yeah, as you know, Penguin books are very thin.
Yes.
So my main thing is they made me cut down, I think, 17,000 words.
Wow. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I okay, I did it. Of course I said yes. I mean, you're on contract. So
Yeah.
yes, 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 whatever. So
Yes.
I think it's actually made me better at it. And now I can say that my next book I won't be writing the boring things. That's why I made that comment
Mm,
earlier, that
yes.
the boring bits have to be taken out. You have to use your instinct and your own judgment, because you as a reader know what's boring.
Yo, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we all
You
know
do.
that. We skip
Yeah.
it, in fact. We skip it.
Yes.
Like for I mean, but it's a tasting, isn't it? It's a lot of it is taste.
Yes.
So for example, there are books I read, like as you said, the historical novels, and there's just too much filler, like
Yes.
details, exactly what screws went into which doorknob. And I mean, it's just too much.
Yes, we don't need to see you make the table, just say, "I made the table."
Yeah, yeah, exactly which tree the oak came from and all that stuff, right? So we
Yes,
fast forward it anyway, so you might as well cut it
exactly,
out.
exactly. Well, we need to wrap up, Ivy, but this was a lot of fun. Where can people find you on social media if they would like to do so?
They can find me on Twitter X. Uh, it's under Ivy Ngeow, Ivyngeow, or they can find me on Instagram under at author Ivy Ngeow, and you can also find me on my URL, which is writemeow.com.
Awesome, awesome. And what's next for you? The American Boyfriend is out there. It's people are buying it. There will be links, by the way, to for people to go and pick that up as well. But also, what's next?
So, well, 2024. So
Yes.
we've just begun. So this year will begin quite in an interesting way for me, unique way, because I'm actually going to India to promote this book.
Awesome.
I'm going on a 5 city tour in
Mm,
3 weeks, and I'm very excited about that because I have never been on an international world tour
yeah.
of just to promote a book.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did one in Southeast Asia in summer,
Mm.
and and I'm also looking forward to coming back after the tour to begin my to begin well, not to begin, to carry on writing my next book.
Yes. Nice. Are there any hints about what the next book might be?
It's going to be a domestic psychological thriller
Nice.
set in London
Cool.
about an Asian family who run hotels.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm peaked. I am peaked. Fantastic. Well, like I said, this was a lot of fun. If you're watching this on YouTube, there will be links in the description of this video where you can find Ivy and you can find her books and you can go buy them. Also, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, there's also links in there as well. So do make sure you go seek out Ivy's books. And yeah, this was a lot of fun, and I look forward to having you back on sometime.
Thank you so much, Luke. That was really, really good. I enjoyed
Cool.
that.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Everyone, thanks for listening, and we will see you in the future. Have
The Secret Shopper.